But two, we know that the mask muffles the voice. The infrastructure part, the school must have consistent water supply. The sanitation must be in place. Thirdly, there must be access control into the school. And that means a few things. There must be people at the gate who control movement. There must be people who who scan temperatures and screen everybody who comes to the school as per the regulations of COVID-19. And then there must be an orientation of the senior management team and the principals and principals and educators. And once those people are back at school, they need to now work on a trimmed timetable. So that now we're getting to the point of getting ready to teach and learn. There must be a trimmed timetable, which National has provided a guidance on. The classrooms, there must be enough space in the classrooms for social distancing. But we are now in an uncertain period. And what is the uncertain period? You know, with the court saying the regulations are unconstitutional, and personally having the limitation of not having read the judgment, and government being given 14 days. We don't know really what's going to happen in 14 days, what will go in, what will stay. So for example, social distancing, does it stay the way it has been defined? And once it's redefined, it has an implication about schooling as a whole. Now, to answer the question, and I'll answer that question specifically as it relates to Gauteng. I think we are generally ready for schools to start. We are ready for schools to start, but I cannot say that it was 100% ready, because you know that the economy also, some of the sectors it took time for them to open, and we needed to prepare the schools, clean them. And again, that's another issue that is a terminological confusion. What is disinfection? What is cleaning? What is decontamination, right? And I think in the public discourse, we use these terms interchangeably. And the advice is that if we can clean the school, that is sufficient. Because when the lockdown started, schools were already closed. So we don't have evidence of a school where, for example, there was positive in the school. So all we need is make sure that the school is clean, it can be used. But as soon as there is a case, then that's where decontamination comes in, to make sure that we don't have residue of the virus. On the issue of what role can stakeholders play, I welcome the initiative by the Each One Teach One Foundation of monitoring. But I think we need more than just the watchdogs. We need some kind of social activism, the spirit of voluntarism, because we know that not all our schools are the same. So where is the community action group to help clean the schools? Where is the community action group to help children when they queue at for their pickup points? Where is the community action group to provide meals in addition to what the schools do provide? So I think that the limitation I've seen in civil society, everyone is expecting government, and everybody is watching government. And that for me is really sad, to see a society that has such a high history of activism, high history of voluntarism, sitting back and waiting for government to do everything. So the challenge for me is to say, where is the community activism beside monitoring? Because monitoring means you are going to find problems. But since we are all in this together, how do we resolve this problem? Because we're going to have a lot of blame game going around. But I don't think, in the interest of our children and in the interest of their education, we should just have watchdogs. Which brings me to the whole point about, this is a very delicate balancing act. You need to balance the right of children to have education and their right to health and their right to dignity. And having had my school year disrupted at one point because Tulani was organizing a school boycott, I know the pain of missing a year or two, not being in school. And although it was for a different purpose, my view is that if we can afford to get the learners back at school, we should do so. Because unless something else is really preventing us, I don't think we will be right by this generation if we make them miss a school year. It must be something absolutely critical that forces us to make this generation miss a school year, because it's a very painful process. Even if you've done it out of commitment to the struggle, it's still a very painful process. Clearly, what we're seeing is that there are clear class and racial distinctions in our society. They have not disappeared. They still mark our society. And you see it in the following ways. Former white schools are ready. Former Black schools, it's uneven. But there's also something that has crept in that's also perpetuating these inequalities. Obviously, my class location as an individual has changed. I have moved to the suburbs. My children go to a former Model C school. What I've seen is that those former Model C schools, the teachers continue to instruct their children during the lockdown. But in the township, let's be honest, there was no instruction going on and interaction between the learners that I'm more aware of. If it has happened, then it is in isolated places. So which means even where you say there was homeschooling, that television broadcasting was not really reaching everybody. We know that we still have huge disparities and apartheid, digital apartheid in our society. And so for the townships, it means for many months, for many weeks, it will be the first time that children get some kind of education. And that is very sad from where I see it. And I think this is where I'm talking about community activism and the spirit of what do we do to support the Black child by providing further education, further lessons, and so forth. So the class and racial perspectives have played themselves out, and we've seen them either in terms of access to continuing education, access to homeschooling, access to teachers during the lockdown. And I want to suggest that most learners in the township do not have those access rights. Finally, no, not before I conclude, I've been asked a question. What about the Freedom Charter's rallying call of the doors of opening the doors of learning and culture? I want to make a bold assertion that we have opened the doors of learning and culture. We have more learners in universities than there were, Black learners than there were under apartheid. We've got more Black graduates than we had under apartheid. We have achieved near universal attendance of secondary and primary education. And I think for me, my reference is the household survey, general household survey that is released by Statistics South Africa. We showed tremendous progress post-1994 in improving access to education and basic services. The struggle today is no longer about access to education. It's about the quality of that education. So which means when you leave school, do you have the basic competencies to join higher education or to join the labor market? But two, are all our children getting the same quality of education, even though the materials they get is the same? And the answer to that question is that it depends on where you live. And if that is still the marker of access to quality education, then it means a lot in terms of the need to redistribute resources to the formerly marginalized areas, so that in my view, children must attend school closer to where they live. This phenomenon of busing children every day, every morning to the schools in the suburbs must come to an end, because it's not productive to the learners and to the children, and it's not sustainable for a child's development. And in that sense, I think that we are beginning to make progress on a number of quality measures. So if you're looking at, in fact, the Gauteng education system is now held by township schools. Whether you're looking at matric pass, you're looking at distinctions, and you're looking at the difference between us and Model C schools. Former Model schools have peaked, and most of our metrics are now performance is coming from township schools, even schools achieving 100%. And I think that is important to get that message to our communities out there. That quality is right, is beginning to come next door to you. And but we still have a perception problem. And that perception problem is something that we as a government and as society needs to work on, because schools in the township are beginning to turn around, but does not mean they've achieved the quality of education that we fought for. Now we have to think about new ways of delivering education, and which is what you call a new normal. So if the social distancing rule stands, so we will continue with a phased approach to opening schools, so that we at least have a time with grade 7 and grade 12. And if it's only those grades, we've got enough classrooms, physical classrooms. But if you bring in other grades, we're going to have a problem of classroom space. And the things we use to close that gap are not going to work. So mobile classrooms are not going to work because they are limited in space, and because you are looking at 20 learners per classroom. So it will mean we have to find ways of giving children the same type of education so that no one is left behind, that they write the same kind of exam so that everybody is writing the same standard. So that's the first thing that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to rethink about rotation, platooning, and so forth and so forth. The one thing we are not prepared for, and that we need to prepare for, is what if parents say my child cannot come to school? I'm choosing that my child stay at home. We know homeschooling as a phenomenon is only available to a middle class. So our public schools in the townships are going to have to find ways of supporting those children who are staying at home, and not by saying we will deliver lessons via YouTube or lessons via MS Teams. They must, we are preparing materials that the schools can drop at homes, and they can do continuous assessment. But the one thing that we don't have is support. Because even if we were to think about teacher aides, we would need thousands of them to liaise between the teacher and the children at home, so that there's continuous education and assessment with those learners. But for the higher grades, we've invested a lot in technology, but unfortunately, our investment has not moved to a point where we can say we are doing online learning like universities are doing. I'm attending classes every Wednesday online, but we have not reached that stage. And if we could reach that stage, it would have been great for the grade 12s to go through this learning mode of learning where it's online. Can I rest the chairperson and fellow South Africans?
Okay, thank you very much for the input made by Comrade Oupa. I think he has done quite a splendid job, and he has touched quite a number of issues. From my side here, I'll take the hands for those who would want to engage on this. Baba, there is this thing there where you can press there and take it. I've noted Mbangwa. Is there anyone? Okay, in the meantime, come Mbangwa.
Thank you, Comrade Mata. Thank you, Comrade Oupa. Comrade Opa, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I'm listening. I'm listening to you.
Oh, all right,
Comrade
thank
Bawa.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much for a very useful input and an update. Chairperson, I tried to call Comrade Opa, but because of this thing of being unemployed, I'm sure he was worried that I was going to look for a job. But in reality is that I also work with military veterans. And we need to find a way, Comrade Opa, that, and I'm glad you are calling for volunteerism, because that's what we wanted to echo and look at sentiments of how we could work together. I'm glad you raised that, because one of the things that we're doing as military veterans, we're also working amongst the combatants of Umkhonto. There's a detachment of June 16. These are the people who were part of the heroes of the Youth Month, of which the country is honoring with a month dedicated to their heroism. One of the things that they are raising, I mean, is that 2016 is essentially about education. And we welcome the decision, if it is coincidental that in South Africa, because of the pandemic, the government has responded by reopening the schools on that particular month. And this is telling in our history in particular, because from where we sit at and our point of view is that we are shaping our struggle for a new pandemic. This pandemic, as you, Comrade Opa, correctly characterized it as unprecedented. It means we need to mobilize society to adapt to the new normal, as you point out. And one of the new normal, we agree with you, it includes activism. So we are agreeing with you. One of the things that we want to do is to have young people, have parents working with the education department. We want to volunteer. I'm glad you're raising the story of volunteers. We want to volunteer in schools to get our hands dirty, clean the schools, as you say, fix the ablution facilities. You know, we see other groupings, including political parties, who lament that there are no toilets. And we would like to be amongst those who wants to work there, including teaching learners. And we think that some of the activism would include in our own homes to teach cleanliness and so on in homes. And so that these messages are included as part of government. So we will be looking forward to engage with you throughout. And we had raised these concerns also within the Each One Teach One Foundation to say, comrades, we need to hold hands together and respond to this pandemic, because indeed, as you point out, we need to find a way that all of us are part to it. And I'm also glad that Comrade Bandile is part of it, because one of the things we wanted to do as military veterans, because we have been approached by a few people, including companies who say they have mobile clinics that could assist in some form or the other, whether there be testing or any other treatment or diagnostic of certain elements in schools and so on, that will be moving around in schools. We can't do that, and we can't even engage with those things before we speak to the likes of the Department of Health to educate or rather guide us on the protocols of dealing with such issues. Having said that, I think the Each One Teach One Foundation with this initiative is a bold step, and I think we need to take this to the people of Soweto as a start, because well, that's where we are, both as Each One Teach One and Johannesburg Umkhonto weSizwe. That's where we're starting with the campaign in line with the June 16 campaign. And the June 16 should, the Youth Month should be dedicated at dealing with this particular pandemic. Let me rest there as well, fellow South Africans.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. I was worried that you will take the whole hour. Okay. Do we have any takers?
Yes, we do. We've raised our hands.
Oh, okay. Ngena Zwane.
Thanks, Bob. Hey, the problem with people like Mbangwa, the spokesperson, so he'll take forever to spokesperson. Some of us have even forgotten our points, but it's okay. There's two things that Comrade Opa raised. Good evening, comrades, and thank you so much, Comrade Opa. I listened to you, and for me, it was more of a challenge, one to us as comrades, but also as parents. I just need to raise one or two things that you mentioned in terms of community activism. You know, you spoke about the orientation of the SMMT, the senior management team. However, you did not mention the student governing body, particularly the parent component. And that for me is a missing link as well, because we as parents need to come to the party, you know, so if you could address that. And then also, I'm also a recipient of class relocation, just like you know. My kids go to better resource schools and stuff. So my question is, how do we as Teach One Foundation and some of us, those who class-wise have relocated, play a role in the education of an African child, particularly for us as Teach One in Soweto? What can we do to up the game? You know, because we privilege this side, but when we go back, I come from Zimbabwe, Orlando West. I'm part of the Orlando West US chapter. So when I go back, it's the opposite. So how do we use COVID-19 bring things to not necessarily a par, but to bring things to a certain level? Thanks. I'll stop for now.
Comrade Chair, can I come in there?
Okay, no, it's fine.
Yeah, good evening, comrades. And Comrade Opa, thank you again for illustrating on that. But if we face a reality of problems in schools, COVID-19 has just made them visible. There has always been underlying problems of schools. And now that there is some health and safety measures that kids has to take, then there is a huge problem. For an example, if we are going to follow what the department is saying on facing in the schools, the reality is majority of the school can maybe able to accommodate up to grade 11s, possibly some to grade 10s. With the new 1.5 per student, it's not possible. Our schools currently generally are overpopulated. But what is it that probably from this platform that is important? There are platforms that can be used, especially not to disadvantage other learners. I mean, the Department of Education has been running a program here, Twinning. Twinning was disadvantaged schools pair with former Model C schools, which are partly government schools as well. But they do have some resources that they're doing. I mean, if kids in Mondio High, for an example, were able to get or to be taught during the lockdown online, and they post everything online and everything, I don't see why is the reason a child from Teteleli in Diepkloof cannot access that platform, because of it's a free platform. I mean, if you look at what the department is doing into zero rating all educational platform. If you look at even the poorest of the poorest in the location, there must be a smartphone in every house if we become practical. That we need to start encouraging learners, especially matric learners. There is no need that 60 days can be put into waste where there is other resources that are there, government are there. I mean, Department of Education has got so many platforms that we just have to talk to kids to say, here's a platform, go in there, do physical science. There's a teacher in another school that is sitting probably at Ekurhuleni and is good in physical science, but it's the same paper, because of it does not matter where they're coming from, they're going to write the same paper, whether you were taught during the lockdown or something. Because when we are going to return to school, the risks are there. Dr. Bandile is here to guide us, probably to say, what are the things? Because of from where we come from, the risk of contamination will always be there. The issue is how do we best manage that and actually best balance the education of the school. But I'm saying platforms that are available, we need to start encouraging and see that kids are using those platforms. There are comrades of ours that created platform. Comrade Muzi has created a platform of LMS where students can learn. It's a free platform. It's there, but it has to, the department, Comrade Opa, there is comrades here that in our midst that actually work very hard with the department to say there's still things that we need to do for our learners in the location. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Hi, Chair, I see there's no list.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comrades who wants to come in?
Yeah, I'm coming in. I'm
Zolisa, and then wait, Zolisa. Is there somebody after Zolisa wants to come in? Okay, come in, Zolisa.
All right, thanks, Chair. I think now we agree. Sanbona and comrades, I hope you are all well and at least having a little bit of alcohol. The one thing that I wanted to raise before I start what I want to say is that maybe it's the way I was taught, but we at least have one PEC member in this audio group or video group, and it's Bandile. But it would be important to understand the PECs and the executive point of departure on this issue. What is it that convinces them that we are ready? That's one. But we all agree that in terms of readiness, we need kids to be safe, we need teachers to be safe, we need everybody, the community of the school, to be safe. Now, maybe if he's willing to come into that discussion, we can just hear without him saying, these are the discussions, and that, but just giving us a brief of the point of departure from where we were at level 4 to now is 1, 2, 3, 4, especially in Gauteng province. That's one. Two, I think generally, in my understanding from media reports and state of readiness that we've received from chapters, that we generally don't have a lot of problems, especially in Kasi schools. The problem that we have is that we're speaking to ourselves about our own problems and we're not engaging with the community so that we get their buy-in. But in order for us to do that, we would need to get a clearer understanding of what is it that we are doing and why are we willing to convince parents to take their kids to schools. 3 is also it's related now to Bandile, unfortunately or fortunately, the health guidance related to the schools reopening. It is important to understand that if we say to parents, take your kids to school, these are the things that we are coming with. 3, what I needed to also understand is that who sometimes takes out reports or guidance or guidelines that are not necessarily the same, they change over time. I want to understand the temperature as a tool in this thing. Is it still a relevant thing? Is it something that we need to rely on? I'm trying to rush, comrades, because I know we don't have the whole day. But also, I think from Comrade Bubape's input, I think currently it is like we do with everything else. It is important to take every site as a coronavirus site until it is deep cleaned or there's activity that is done to make it not to be one. But once we've done that, it also comes now to how do we ensure that even the people that go in are also sanitized to a point that at least the environment is gonna be safe. And that is part of the things that we need to solve before we say the schools are opened. And I agree, they must be opened, by the way. And then in community action, in terms of what Opa was talking about, the EOTOF is on a process or stance to ensure that all stakeholders are seen to be helpful. Being one, we are willing to go into the schools and provide assistance, and that to me is volunteerism. But also for that to be able to happen, at some point, there needs to be agreements with government in terms of how do we make this working together useful for both government and the stakeholders, IOTOF being one. But also in terms of activating the community interest or support, IOTOF, I think, is more than able to do that. Number 3, class contradictions and buying in from communities. We must be able to go to communities and say, these are the class contradictions we see. But if we do not act and make sure that the schools are reopening at a particular point, it means that we are deepening those class contradictions. We agree they are there, but we should come to a point where we try and close the gap. Also, when government speaks, we must understand it better, so that when we take their point of view to communities, either individually or as organizations, we must be able to take a canvassed position and be willing to convince them. We can't be forcing them to a particular point without engaging with them and showing them that this is the criticalness of these schools being opened, and this is the plan of government. I heard the minister speaking, but I'm not sure that I'm convinced of the plan. So it would be nice to get clarity on what the plan is. But comrades, yeah, maybe I should stop there and wait for other speakers to speak. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoliswa. From my list here, I'll take that everyone who has raised his hand has done so, and we've given them an opportunity to raise their question or inputs. I will give Opa.
Chairperson, there are people who are still raising hands.
Oh, okay.
Can I come in? Thank you.
Oh, okay, come in.
Fellow South Africans, I think I'm going to participate in the discussion as a member of IOTOF, not as a PEC member of the ANC or as a MEC. But I think we need also to be real in the discussion about what we call school readiness. Because it's the same discussion I think we normally have around January. How ready are our schools for the first day when the schools reopen, they will be teaching. And I think maybe that's the question that we need to answer. What is our fear? Because there's no way that, to be blunt, that there's no way that we are going to be able to stop the infections. The infections are going to happen. I think even amongst ourselves here in the chat group or in this call, there might be 50 or 60% of us would have COVID-19. And it's something that we need to actually to understand. It's a message that I think comes across not okay all the time when people say that we must stop the spread, stop the infections. It's not possible. I think scientifically and otherwise it's not possible unless I think the only way to stop the infection is to close off and lock down the whole South Africa, or the whole, if we're looking at one region, the whole region, and stop everyone from moving out for 14 days. And then make sure that those people don't interact with anyone else afterwards. So that's the first thing that I want us to actually to know, the inevitability of everything, that we are going to be infected. And it's something that, for me, personally, it feels that we cannot judge the success of the response plan or the response on COVID on us stopping the spread. So if Northern Cape have got 10 or 30 infections, it doesn't mean that in 2 months' time, they will still be having 30 infections. They might be having 1,000, which is something that we need. So we need to be clear that when we say we are afraid of our children to be infected and teachers, currently we are sitting with a list of teachers who have been infected wherever they are and not at school, and in 2 weeks' time, some of them will have actually recovered. The kids, the other thing scientifically about the kids is that even when we share the statistics. The age group between 0 and 20, there's actually 0 death in the past 3 months in the province. We have not had any death so far in that group. So, but it doesn't mean that we have not had infections in that group. So the infection process or the disease process of that group is not that severe. The people who've got that severe group are those who are above 50, and that's where most of the people die. So I just want us to be clear that when we say we are fearing infection, what do we mean, and where the kids are now currently as we speak, are they not going to get infected? But I promise you they would be, even if the schools are open or they are not open, they will still be infected. So maybe my last point, I'm just raising questions. My last point would be, you know, there's a talk that schools must be cleaned, must be decontaminated. And it's an illogical and unscientific thing that we have to say. So you want to decontaminate a place that has been sterile for the past 12 weeks. And you make it as an issue that, no, we cannot go into that school until it's cleaned or decontaminated. That's the term that is being used. That is illogical and unscientific. So I would want us to take it from that level, that if we are fearing that people will be infected, our fear is misplaced because we are all going to be infected. No matter how much precaution you get, you're going to put. And it's just the nature of the disease process. You know, the only thing that is important for us is just we have to manage the rate of the transmissions, which I can agree with. But with phasing in of students, of learners, it's managing the transmission so that you have a certain number of people that will be exposed and that will be able to be taken care of by the health facility. So I'm hoping that I'm bringing some light that it doesn't matter what we do, you know, even if you can stay there and you're going to get the infection, you know, and it will be just the best immune system that will win, you know. But I think I just wanted to raise that the fear is that even the children now that we are saying that they must not go to school, they are running around the township, they are playing football, they are playing everything where they are. It's not like they are locked down or they are quarantined where they are. So we must balance what is the benefit if we keep them at home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. And I think Comrade Bandile clarified that he is participating as a member of the H1 Teach One Foundation. Opa, do you want to come in and take some of the questions that were asked or clarities? And then from there, we'll have to see what we're going forward.
Now, thanks, comrades, and for your comments and questions. The issue of how we organize voluntarism, it's an issue that needs proper discussion, right? And I think, you know, Comrade Sisulu always emphasize organization. And I appreciate that fact because it means if you're not organized, you can't take anything forward. So it's upon organized formations like the foundation to sort of then organize that relationship between the state and civil society from a point of view of how you organize people to volunteer. So that one, I suggest that it's a matter that can be taken forward. Mbangwa ethu sayisolva estrateni, don't worry, brawam. The SGB parents, SGBs are still going to be orientated. We're just in a phase where we're sort of saying, let's get ready, prepare the schools for the return of the children. And comrades are right that COVID-19 has opened up has made it visible, because it's not like we did not know that inequality is rising in South Africa, that it's largely urban poverty, because you've seen people who are struggling in the urban areas, that's rising. and that the link between the black middle class and the black working class still very much strong, because you can see the tensions of people who could not have to visit their parents. And so it means that on the positive side is, how do you take those forces that still sort of face a combined system of oppression, even under democracy, and mobilize them for a different purpose? But that's a discussion for another day. But clearly, the deep-seated systemic problems of South Africa were made more visible, and other people were riding on those problems to run their own agenda. But also, what it has revealed this period is that, let's be honest, for our fourth industrial revolution is still very much a talk of the town. We're not practicing it. And it's clear that we do not take advantage of technology during this period to at least ensure continuous learning for at least the class the class of matric. But we are exploring ways of trying to broadcast various lessons and try to provide content online, which is freely available on the Gauteng Department of Education platform. But what this also shows that the role of the parents, right? Middle class parents are taking their role to support their children and so forth. But what's happening in working class families? And we can blame the parents, but we need to understand why it is that they are unable to play the kind of role that we're seeing in middle class families. And then finally, I'm gonna say something. I feel like the relationship between the community and the state is very transactional. And you see it again in the disruption of delivery of PPEs in certain communities, disruption of construction work and so forth, which means unless the state pays us, we will not play a role. And the conversation always starts with what opportunity exists for the state to pay the community. And that for me is a wrong kind of activism that I will support. I support the activism that says, historically we are part of a movement to change things. So what happened to that agency for change, right? What happened to that agency for change? It may be agency to mobilize, to bring information, to force us bureaucrats to do certain things. But if it's only transactional, then all we're doing is fighting for the pie. We're fighting for the patronage. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by, so that it's not seen as if I'm just talking. So we combined, as former students of my secondary school, we formulated an alumni association. From our own pockets, we were able to provide learners who do not have school shoes. We're able to give the top performing learners laptops in matric, and we're able to do all sorts of things. You may say they are welfarist, but it is at least it's a tangible intervention by former students to do something in the school. And it is that kind of activism. I mean, personally, I was also tutoring economics for matriculants for 2 years, free. No one paid me. But I feel that the general mood in the country is the state must give us opportunities for business, and that's what we have. Voluntarism and community participation has come to mean. I'm not saying that's what Comrade Mbangwa is suggesting. I'm just sort of seeing a Malay in our community, which is beginning to turn violent in the Val, right? That people say they themselves want to clean and be paid. They themselves want to be the brigades and be paid. Yeah, let me pause there, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. And I think the debates are continuing to aspire. Let me check if Nge is around. If it's not around, is Bugula around? Because I can't see from my side here.
I just came in.
Oh, okay. Thank you,
yeah.
folks. Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's fine because you just came in, because I wanted maybe if you would want to say something or so, or
No.
give Nge an opportunity to say something.
No, I'll pass for now.
Oh, okay. Comrade, and then I'm tempted to, unless there are other hands or people who want to speak, not those who spoke, a new set of hands. Maybe I'll take one or two, and then we'll move towards the closure. Do you want to come in, Zoli? Zoli, so do you want to come in?
Angithi, you saying because I spoke, I can't speak again.
No. I was trying to say, let's give other comrades who have not spoken an opportunity to speak. But if there is nobody, then I can allow one or two, and then we work towards closing.
As mina ngiyayithanda honesty Maqabane, and I think Ubandile has spoken honestly. Ukuthi whether niya esikolweni or aniyi, the condition is the same. Whether niya emsebenzini or aniyi, okusalayo coronavirus izakubamba baba. But yeah, having said all of that, we must find a nice way of saying it to the people who own the kids. Ogoti, this is where we at, and this is the unfortunate situation that whether uyavuma or awuvumi ngaye, but okusalayo ukuthi awukwazi ukumgcina safe, and how do we work together to ensure that bonke abantwana basesikolweni, and government will take precautions, of course. That's one. But two, as the of I at least where I'm at, I have not experienced an issue of wanting to be, and I understand what Comrade Budibe is saying, but we are activists that have been through a lot. So when we activate activism from our members, especially the ones that have not been introduced to midlife crisis or problems or lies, is that when you expect comrades to volunteer, at least give them minimum basics. That's why partnerships are important. It might not even be with government. And they're not asking for a lot. And I'm talking to everybody who's listening. They're not asking for a payment or a monthly income. All we need to do is ensure that they have food, they have money to get to their schools, and the work will be done. But without proper coordination with the people who are in charge, which is government now, there's no way we can make an impact. We need to have an agreement with this is how we're working it, and this is where we're going with the work that we're doing. But also ensuring that those people that move from their homes do not go back there with hungry stomachs as well. We will know what is being said about people that have been activists for so long. When we ask them to do work, we must at least think of food, we must at least think of protective gear and those things, and it's not payment. But going forward, I think we need to put our time most importantly than talking to each other, to speaking to our communities and parents, and trying to sell the view that it doesn't matter whether umntana kusekhaya or usesikolweni sineyinkinga, but say it in a nice way so that they don't become problematic now. But we need to communicate that information with them and try to bring them to our side, because however much we can understand that this is what needs to happen, if we do not get their buy-in, we're not going to win in getting the kids back to school. So I hope that after this discussion, the people that are going to be concluding are going to be able to say part of way forward is how do we get on into the societies. It might be with ANC platforms, Sanko platforms, whomever's platform, so that we engage with them, that they understand that there is no malice in the government saying that the kids must go back to school, but they need to go to. But I thought it's important to just raise those two things, Chairperson. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Hezo. And then from where I'm sitting, I would want to take this opportunity to work towards closing for this meeting. And let me invite Chairperson Wabusayinyova, Umzamo Martins, to say a word or two, and after that, then we'll have to close this meeting. Mzamo?
Thanks, Comrade Amandla. Or fellow South Africans. Comrades, I think just to thank Comrade Umabit and his team for organizing us this session. And secondly, thanking Comrade Opa, to give us a sense and analysis where they are sitting at. And I'm trying just to say two things that as the foundation, obviously, Comrade, we didn't fold our arms when this happened. We're doing a couple of things. One, we mobilized our volunteers to visit the schools in their chapters to understand the state of readiness of the schools. Are these schools ready for opening or not? And in a short time, how do we partner with that? And then the second thing that we are doing, we've launched a research study around the impact of COVID in education. What's going to be the actual impact around this thing as a scientific study? Because obviously one of the things that as soon as you've lost so much time, we need to find out impact, a future outcome out of these things. And obviously lessons learned out of this thing. And then the other thing that we are trying to launch as well is the issue of abolition, sanitations, that program as well. But I think what we need to do, Comrade Opa, from your side is to assist us with, as we're volunteering, we need to find government amicable to get into partnerships or MOUs or some agreements, like so was saying, that we don't go do the things on our own, even if we want to mobilize resources outside there. But there must be a home that is welcoming to us, to saying, we understand your background, where you come from, what you want to do, and the solutions that you are trying to bring in. Because if you look at my solutions that the comrades are bringing in from the technology side, e-learning, and all of those other things are housed somewhere, but obviously we need to find where there is some agreements that is happening. And two, obviously, we want to have some partnership or partnering agreement with that. And obviously, in the last part, in short, is that I would like to thank all the comrades that are volunteering their time to go to schools, volunteering their time to serve in the task team that has been created to deal with the pandemic, and then obviously looking for solutions, not only now beyond COVID, that how does education recover and how do we build centers of excellence? Amandla. Thanks, Comrade Mabit.
Thank you, Chairman.
It's online.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think, comrades, the topic for today that begin to say what impact will COVID-19 pandemic have in our education system or schooling has been covered extensively. And we had quite a number of the discussions around that. And I'm happy that Ubandile also came in and Opa came in and quite a number of comrades came in to actually put it out there that as Each One Teach One Foundation, what we could do as a foundation or members, former members of COSAS, is to say we need to be, one, actively involved in a school as part of the parent wing now that we're parents or community and so forth. But also I think that there's something that came out clear is that, especially when Bandile was saying, my understanding was that let's tell communities the truth as it is. I think to me that was profound. Comrades, without wasting time, let me also thank SIPO, who has worked in making sure that the technology uyahlanganisa lapha ukuthi this thing ihlangane. Other than that, comrades, thank you very much, and hope that when we call one of these series, you will always be joining. Thank you very much, comrades.
Good night, comrades.
Good night.
Night.
Amandla.
Amandla.
Ungashayeki kwichi mzamo. Mzamo ikwichi lakho manje.
Yeah, ungangena manje.